Cool. So welcome everybody. Good afternoon, and we have an exciting, guest that we're speaking to today on our latest round of interviews. We're speaking to the founder of Perlego, Gauthier. Welcome.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. So for those of you that don't know, we're putting this on as the British-Irish Trading Alliance chapter, BITAx. We're out there looking to share good messaging, and we're creating support and development for young professionals. And I think it's exciting to connect, today to speak to another young business founder. I think it will probably be good to hear from you. We'll say a little bit about what Perlego do, because every time I explain it to someone, they think, "What a good idea! Why has no one that done before?" So,
awesome.
So you can tell us a bit about the business.
Yeah, sure. So Perlego's kind of been branded as the Netflix or Spotify for textbooks. It came out of a personal pain point of mine, which was expensive price of books. So when I was at uni, I bought like an accounting book worth £200. I'd read 2 chapters of the book and never use it again. And what was really interesting was, at a similar level, I saw that the 4 big publishers, Pearson, Wiley, Cengage, and McGraw-Hill, were all seeing their revenues decline due to piracy. So people finding books online illegally. So solution for students, a simple space where they get all their learning material at an affordable price. And the solution for publishers is a way to distribute content efficiently and recuperate revenues lost from piracy and the secondhand book market.
I mean, when you think piracy, obviously you're in that world, so I don't automatically assume textbooks, right? Is that a more recent trend? I mean, obviously piracy's been, hitting other publishers for decades on other media channels.
Yeah, so if we look at it's been growing, so I'm just putting on my head, it's been growing by more than 40% year on year. You've got websites like Z Library, Sci-Hub, and LibGen. And due to the fact that these books are so expensive, people are going about any way to get them for free. So it's been a huge, it's been a huge problem the last 2-3 years. And using the analogy of music, you've seen it rise in the music industry, right? It almost crippled the music industry. Very similar now, we're seeing it in the publishing industry.
Okay. I wanted to get an understanding of, it's clear how the idea came about, and I think that's probably why when I speak to other people and there's almost that, resounding, the penny drops almost, what a good idea, how can this not take off? But I suppose I wanted to talk a little bit about how that pain point first manifested itself into an idea, really, and how that pain point, that idea and that really early stages of, when did you know you had a business?
Oh, it was really tricky. So this was actually my dissertation project at university.
Okay.
And what was really interesting was like all the, someone's tried to do Perlego in 2012, but the timing wasn't right. Publishers weren't really feeling the pain from piracy in the secondhand book market yet. So basically, I had sold a small business whilst at uni, and I was like, I've got a bit of money. I might as well give it a go. Let's try and validate a few key hypotheses. So the first 2 I wanted to validate was supply. Could I bring on publishers? And our first round of funding, we did about £500,000. We, by that time, had around 100 publishers, and it was a very efficient and cheap way to validate the model. So look, I didn't pay myself anything for the first 6 months. It was all about validating and testing. And I had my co-founder, Matt Davis, who's kind of the tech in our team. And so perfect complementary skill set, right? One person who's doing the fundraising, signing the publishers, doing the deals. The other person who's starting to build up the platform. So when you do get the content, you can start bringing some users on board.
And I mean, to me, that sounds like a pretty big task, going out to 100 publishers. But that being said, the issues that they had with piracy, it seems like, they were quite receptive. You managed to get that early stage, validation model up and running. How did you go about that? Was it just a case of knocking down doors, trying to get a foot in to speak about the opportunity?
Yeah, making so many mistakes, right? I was, I spoke to all the wrong people in the beginning, but it was pure hustle. Just literally email, learn, and then finally get through to a few people. You had to really do the passion pitch at the beginning, because at the beginning, like, I didn't know anything about publishing, never had built a business. But yeah, I'm very grateful for the few publishers that trust us from the start.
And if you were going to do that exercise again, Do you reckon you could have done it differently? You could have done it more efficiently to try and get, I mean, it's worked out, right? But could have been a bit different.
Yeah. I think what's quite clear now as a first-time founder was I didn't have any credibility from the VC space or the early investment space. What's really nice now is hopefully in my next business, and that's many years out, is it will be much easier for me to raise funds. So I think as everything in your career, that when you start it off, it's much harder. And two other learnings for me that I always share is the importance of bringing on a designer. So we would build things without designing it, and it cost us a lot, and we'd have to rebuild it. So I'd have a designer from day one. And then the other thing I would kind of reflect upon was we were very lean in the first few days. If the first few months we didn't want to spend anything, our burn was like £3,000 a month. It was a small salary to both of us, and we didn't spend any money. But upon reflection, we should have been a bit more aggressive in terms of our go-to-market and hired more people faster.
Okay. And it's interesting you spoke about being a first-time founder and just having that little bit higher hurdle to go through, when, especially getting that really important early stage VC money. Obviously, a process was completely new to you. How did you go about that? And did you see, were people there to sort of guide you and help you through that?
Yeah, the early stage community is super helpful. So what I've noticed is the best approach is to talk to other founders who've raised funds before. They in turn introduce you to angel investors, and then angel investors in turn introduce you to other angel investors. So, I'm from Belgium originally. I couldn't raise money in Belgium, came to the UK, and I managed to raise £500,000 in sort of 8 weeks. So it just shows what a great ecosystem we have here.
And was it sort of was this going on at the same time as, there's three parts of this, or forgive me for oversimplifying it, but you've got the publishers, obviously there was the funding, and then of course there was the digital, the tech being built. Was it really a case that all three plates were spinning at once? Were these publisher conversations happening at the same time as the angel investor part?
Yeah, so kind of think about it like this way. First 3 months, I was by myself and Matt just building up the supply. We had a bit of traction, so we had our minimum viable product to go to investors and say, this is the idea. We've already tested it, got 100 publishers. Can we have the money so we can continue to build the product and start monetizing it? But yeah, they were all kind of, at one point, they were all going together, and they still are, right? All those conversations, still raising money, still talking to publishers, still building the tech. It's never ending, but with the more people you have, the less responsibility you have for those three sectors.
I mean, probably a very simple way of looking at really any business in the space, but yeah, you've always, of course, those points never going away. What were the main concerns that you had to deal with your early stage? What was the main feedback you were getting that wasn't positive from the early stage investors?
So on paper, it made no sense, right? I never worked in publishing, never built up a big company, so, and I was still relatively young. I think started Perlego when 24, so. It was much more around make sure you got support from people who've done this before and you can learn from their mistakes. So I think, the fact that it was all new to me, that was one thing which people were a bit worried about. And then the second thing was, I think we needed to hire faster. We were too slow on our hiring in the early days. So that was another pressure point.
Do you find that on the early days, I would have thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the sensitivity to business of getting the right people around you is a lot higher. Being in a situation of trying to build that early stage team around you, if you're trying to be the perfectionist and try and find the right person, it might never happen. How did you deal with that balance?
You've got to really take time for your people. The first 10 hires are the most important hires in any company. So for me, yes, we were maybe slow, but the top talent we have today is still with us from the start, right? So we've got very little churn in our business. And I think they've been the foundations to our success. So I think, yes, you've got to move fast, but you've got to move fast with people that you're happy to work with for the next 5 to 10 years.
And has that, now that, I mean, just to give us an idea, and for those that may not be too familiar with the company, from where you were to where you are now, I suppose just a snapshot of where the business is in terms of headcount and what's on the horizon?
Yeah, sure. So to date now we've raised over 15 million. We should be raising another 20 million in the next few months. We're now 62 in the team. We've got over 2,800 publishers, thousands and thousands of users, we've been growing by more than 200% in COVID-19. And what we've seen with COVID-19 is a huge acceleration for edtech, but also for digital solutions. So that's been a huge help. But yeah, the business is completely different to where it was 6 months ago, and it'll be completely different in 6 months again. And I think that's what drives me, and that's the excitement is, you can see how your work is compounding and how fast it's growing.
Do you find that, now the proposition for someone joining the team, and I'm thinking back to a lot of people that I speak to in our community that, they're always trying to work out, is this a company that I want to be joining? Is this a company that's values are aligned to mine? Early stage, I can see it as super attractive to be, in that first team of 10 and go on that journey with the business. But of course, you're taking a chance, right? I know that you would have had, I'm sure, a very strong belief on how you're getting on, probably like many other founders of businesses that started at that time that potentially haven't had that success, but now the proposition to someone joining the business is a little bit different. They've got a bit more proof, but is it a little bit less exciting, getting involved at slightly later stages? I mean, what sort of messaging do you give out and to someone looking to join the team at the moment, or someone that you're trying to bring in?
That's a great question. So I think from my side, how can I put it? The business is massively de-risked, right? You don't have the risk of not having a job in 6 months because we don't have capital. There's also much more of a luxurious work environment. I mean, look at the space we're in right now. When we started off, we were working like really shoddy offices. So yes, it's less exciting in the sense that you're not employee number 9 or number 10, but it's way more exciting because you're part of a scale up and you know that the things are working. And a lot of the early stage stuff, which is very hard and very tricky to crack, is now being cracked. And now you can compound on the growth and double down on things that are working. So I think this is the optimal time to start a business or to join a business. Like being employee number 50 to 100 is the best time, because a lot of the hard early work is done. You've got capital, you've got a team, you've got great people, and now it's really about taking it to unicorn status.
Now, maybe a slightly abstract question to a founder of a business, but someone going through that journey that was looking at companies that on paper may appear to be quite similar in terms of funding, in terms of stage. How do what do you think they should be looking for to try and work out if it's a journey they should be going on with that business?
So you talk about like other stage companies or in edtech or any kind of company?
I suppose just not specifically edtech, but
Okay.
your companies that are going through similar sort of, a similar funding round, similar journeys, but not specifically edtech. I suppose a bit more general.
Yeah, it's great question. I think for me, there are two things that every business is completely different, and every founding team and every team has different culture. For me, the thing I would love. Perlego won't be a profitable business for at least several years to come. So we'll be very dependent on investor capital, and we need to continue to fuel our growth to build a huge company. But at the same time, we're disrupting a $15 billion industry. So without capital, without driving revenue back to publishers, it's not possible. If I was in a founder in similar shoes, I'd look at my, how do I drive profitability in my business so that I don't have to raise external funding? Because as we saw with COVID-19, a lot of my friends who are in other startups are having a tough time. So I think the biggest question is, do I have a business that makes sense, at least from a unit economics standpoint? And yes, we can drive up revenue and be in a growth mode. But if I've got to cut everything and tomorrow, can we survive without VC funding? That would be one of the big questions I'd want to ask myself. Okay.
And obviously the business having changed shape and developed significantly, I'd be really interested to get a bit of insight to, what your, really your role as a founder at the moment, and what that looks like in terms of contrast to the early stages. How has that changed? Are you wearing different hats now? Is it different?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So early days, you're doing a bit of everything, right? You've got to be, I think the best founders are great generalists. So they can do a bit of everything from marketing, sales to pitch. Now my role is ultimately about three things. It's people, making sure we have the best people, let them get on with the best job, setting the strategy. So I work closely with another guy to, where we're going. That could include opportunities to buy, to build companies. And then the third big thing is make sure our current investors are aligned to where we're going and bring on new investors. So basically what I do is I help with the strategy, get the money, get the people, and then let everyone execute on it. And I try and help out as much as I can.
Okay, oh, that's really good. And one of the things I was, I suppose, quite keen to get an understanding of, and we actually touched on it, just earlier today before we jumped on this call, was as the business is growing, as a founder of a business, I always had this imagine that it would just envelop you, it would just become everything. And we spoke a little bit about trying to get downtime and trying to get time outside of the business. Do you find that's become more important? Have you had to be conscious about trying to make that time? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so I think, look, it's a really great question. A lot of people talk about this in the industry right now. Ultimately, I don't believe in people who are not obsessed about their business. So I see a lot of founders, we're part of Founders Factory, who are like, yeah, this is a nice lifestyle company. I work 3 days a week and then I'm off 4 days a week, and they have a great lifestyle and a kind of great work-life balance. That's just personally not the kind of person I am. I want to build a huge billion-dollar company. I want to democratize education. So I'm very driven from that perspective. And so my work-life balance isn't as great as some of the other founders. That said, now I've set in some ground rules to make sure that, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So I try not work on weekends. I leave my laptop at the office, or if I'm working from home, I'm going to leave my laptop in another room because, I'm sure you had this as well. Working from home, we were working all the time. You had no distraction, and actually, I think a lot of people had a mini burnout over the last few months. But yeah, I think, look, even if you didn't pay me a salary, I love what I do, and I'd forgo my salary to continue to build Perlego. This is my dream, right? To build a company is my dream. I love every bit about it, but I'm trying to take more time off, and so now, I'm going to take 5-6 days off in August. The business is in a much better position than where we were last year or the year before. So I can offer some luxuries like that. But yeah, has that answered your question or not really?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's,
Cool.
I suppose it's just that kind of, I'm taking that time, and you've touched on that burnout. And I think a lot of people have felt that, whether they're founders of business or they're working, it's people that are passionate about what they do. Often it's a bit you don't get the best out of yourself when we're in that situation, which it sounds like we're on a very similar wavelength. So just lastly, what I wanted to touch on was in terms of it sounds like you've got quite a clear vision of where you want the business to be.
Yep.
Has that changed slightly? I mean, maybe when you were knocking down the doors of the first publishers, maybe it was slightly scaled down vision of that. I mean, how's that main perception of where the business is going at a high level changed over time?
100%. When we started Perlego, it was very much Spotify for textbooks. Now it's very much a platform where you can study smarter, faster, more efficiently, and not just the book products. So we have things like citations, collaboration, referencing that will all encompass into this learning platform. And I think, look, as everything, your vision develops as you continue to grow as a founder, but also as a company, and you get more resources. But also for us, it's part of we've got kind of 3 strategic goals. Shift to an organic growth model, so where we're not dependent on paid advertising. 2, remove some of our book risk, because Perlego, we're very dependent on our publishers, so how can we mitigate some of that risk? And then thirdly, how do we increase our total addressable market? So not just focus on students, but lifelong learning and global education. So that's kind of where we're working towards, and I think where we're going is really exciting, and probably where, if we talk again, in a few months, it'll be very different again, but we know what the end goal is, and we're working our way back on a quarterly roadmap to get to that in the next 18 months, and Perlego will probably change again in 24 months.
Yeah. Well, look, I do hope we get the opportunity in a couple of months to check back in again. It's been I've been following the journey, a little bit, as the funding rounds have been coming through, and just seeing the vision and it's great to connect and try and share some of that insight. So, look, I really appreciate, your time today, and I think we've delivered some great messaging for some of our audience and community, and I'm sure everyone will be checking out Perlego and sharing it for with their peers.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much. And if there's anything I can do, let me know.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Gauthier.